So the MacBook Pro 13-inch over here is a very weird product when you think about it. It's basically Apple's culmination of efforts to make a great mobile experience for creative professionals while still being the relatively cheaper option to its big brother, the 16-inch MacBook Pro. So when it's juggling so many balls, at one point or another it has to fall flat on its face for all of us to laugh at. So where does Apple make compromises when it comes to this thing for a good mobile editing experience? Well, that's what I'll be talking about in this video, because I've already done a review of this thing, which I recommend you check out. It's gonna be up in the iCards. Today I'll focus specifically on how this thing does in editing specifically, because that's kind of supposed to be one of the main target audience for this product, video editors. So let's get into it, shall we? So looking at it specs wise, it definitely does not look like an impressive machine for video editing, especially if you want to go for a model that actually has a reasonable price like the one I have right here, which has a 1.4 GHz quad-core Intel i5, which is also 8th gen, not 10th gen, so it's not even that new, plus 16 GB of RAM. So like I said in my main review, if you just handed this laptop to someone and say, hey, edit on that, they'll let you go on a worker strike, because on paper that seems like a terrible combination for editing. It's somehow Apple makes it work. I don't know how, but they still managed to make it a absolutely great editing experience, at least great for a laptop, that is. Now, of course, they did do a lot of optimization, and Intel Iris graphics are really optimized for just professional workloads. But in Hitfilm Pro and Premiere Pro, which is the editing software I use for all my videos and also other projects, the experience is actually really good. Now naturally I had to crank down the playback resolution all the way to minimum, and if you try to edit on anything past 4K, then it's literally a nightmare, and even 4K is really pushing it when you start adding in a few more effects. But overall it's still rather responsive, which is still a success. So even if that's fine, the main cardinal sins of this laptop come when it's time for exporting, because that is when this thing absolutely falls flat. So for my main review, I ran a bit of a test. So I made a test video that's 4K 25 FPS 100 megabits per second footage. I just edited it together into a 5-minute clip. Then using Adobe Media Encoder, I exported it on both my main PC and on the MacBook Pro. And just for some extra context, my main PC uses a Ryzen 3700X and a GTX 1080 Ti graphics card. And as you can imagine, the export times were pretty hideous. We were taking 44 minutes on the MacBook Pro. Yeah, 44 minutes to export a 5-minute clip, and just 22 minutes, so exactly half the time, on my PC. So definitely quite a big difference there. However, that's not even to mention the battery. Now, the battery on this thing is in theory pretty decent, and if you're just using the MacBook idly, say just browsing the web or enjoying a few lewds, then it's absolutely fine. In those cases, the battery can last even a few minutes without even ticking down a percent. However, the second you launch anything intensive, then this thing just doesn't keep up. In things like Premiere Pro, Photoshop, Lightroom, Hitfilm Pro, things like that, it takes around 1% a minute, sometimes even more, depending on what you're doing. It gets so much worse when you're exporting. Because again, for that little 5-minute clip drag race I did between the PC and MacBook Pro, I also measured how much the battery ran down during those 44 minutes of exporting. And that exporting process took the battery down from 86% to 34%. So definitely not impressive, but that's not even to mention the problem of I/O, because here we have two Thunderbolt 3 ports. So if you want to edit on a mouse, because let's be honest, editing on a trackpad isn't the best, well, that's one port used up, and then if you want to charge your thing, boom, that's two Thunderbolt 3 ports used up. Now thankfully you do have an audio jack for say headphones, so that's great, but what if you had some external drive where you have all your footage, loading expansion dogs and dongles and everything, which just makes it such an insane hassle. And that's not even to mention the touch bar, which is a defining feature of the MacBook Pro. Now that is a mixed bag, because touch bar is great and it's really useful, but the software support is very limited, at least at this time. Now naturally it gets way more support with Apple software. In fact, even things like the calendar app having special features for the touch bar. So I guess, hey, if you're a big fan of editing on iMovie, I guess, then the touch bar is also great. And also things like Final Cut and Pro Tools do have support for it. But what's weird is that the Adobe suite doesn't. Premiere Pro? Nope. After Effects? Nope. Photoshop? Nope. Lightroom? Nope. Audition? Nope. And you know what's the most ironic thing? Even Office has support for the touch bar. That's right. Microsoft Office has a better integration of the Apple touch bar than Adobe suite software. Now, that could just be because Apple is Apple and they're just keeping all the stuff for the Adobe suite hostage because they want people to use stuff like Final Cut instead. That could be the case, but that is so disappointing, it's insane, seeing how the touch bar is one of the most, integral parts of the MacBook Pro experience. But thankfully that is just a software thing, so maybe in the future we will see actual use for the touch bar in Adobe software. So overall, when it comes to editing, it's definitely a mixed bag. It's great for stuff on the go, but the lack of Adobe integration for the touch bar and also the battery and also the I/O make it a bit of a mixed bag. So as long as you're fine with all those limitations, then it's still a pretty good experience to use on the go. So hey, if this video was helpful, then definitely check out my Patreon. It's going to be down in the video description below, because you're on $1 a month goes a long way to have on my channel, and allows me to make way better videos, also videos on way more interesting topics. Also like to thank my patrons Gavin Burns and MKB. Thank you ever so much. Then there's also some Amazon links if you want to buy anything from Amazon. Then if you use our links, we get some money, you don't pay anything extra, it's a win-win. I'll probably link it down to some nice Thunderbolt free docs, which you'll probably need for this MacBook Pro. And then there's also my Discord if you want to talk to me about this or whatever else really. And I guess that's really it, so I hope you enjoyed this quick little video. If you didn't subscribe, like whatever, and I'll see you all in one next. Goodbye everyone. Goodbye.